day. My name is Mike Hayes, and I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Student Life in Campus and Student Life here at UChicago. My first order of business is to add our collective welcome to you to the University of Chicago, and to secondly welcome you to your first Campus Life meeting, or CLM. CLMs will be helpful for you as you further understand more about the university's fundamental values. You'll participate in 2 such meetings during Module 9 here in orientation, online orientation, and then 2 additional in-person programs during O Week. Our program this morning will focus on UChicago's foundational values, and one of them, free expression. Joining me today are 4 members of our community who will share their perspectives and experiences on this important value. I'd ask that each panelist introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Ravi Randhava, and I serve as Executive Director of the Center for Identity and Inclusion.
Hi there, my name is Ellie Citron, and I'm a rising 4th year in the college studying history and human rights. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm Michelle Rasmussen, Dean of Students in the university.
Hi, I'm Leila Brammer. I'm Director of the Parsia Program for Public Discourse in the college.
Thank you all for being here this morning. We have a lot of ground to cover in our program this morning, so we are going to just jump right in. I'll be posing several questions to our panelists about some foundational and contextual issues around freedom of expression, both nationally and here at UChicago. The baseline from which we start our discussions is the 2015 report of the Committee on Freedom of Expression, or the Stone Report, from which the Chicago principles are actually framed. The link to this document is provided in your orientation materials. So let's get started, and let's contextualize free expression in both an academic setting and then what it means in a larger context. So for first, both Leila and Michelle, why is free expression so important in an academic setting?
So I think when we think about free expression at the University of Chicago in particular, it's absolutely integral to the type of environment that the university wants to create for its faculty and students and scholars, which is one where any individual should feel free to put forward a hypothesis, opinion, viewpoint, no matter how controversial, no matter how untested, maybe even it might be offensive to some people. But it's only by bringing forward those ideas freely that you can really have this true marketplace of ideas where people can debate, argue, contextualize their viewpoints, and ultimately get us to advance our knowledge and our scholarship as an institution and for the world. And that sounds very aspirational, and it is. But in order to have any chance of meeting that aspiration, you absolutely have to have the environment where free expression is not only tolerated, but actually celebrated and supported.
Great, thanks. Leila, thoughts?
To extend on Michelle's excellent statement about the academic endeavor and the pursuit of knowledge, free expression itself for you, as we invite you into this academic community, a community of learning, is an integral skill. It is a habit of the mind that will allow you to test ideas, to find out the best thinking, and to create together new ways of seeing the world. And that's the endeavors that we need, not just for this campus, but for our global communities.
Michelle, free expression has been front and center in higher ed for several years. Can you summarize why this is such a hot topic for institutions of higher ed?
Well, I think one of the things that characterizes a lot of colleges and universities is that it brings together people from such diverse backgrounds. Very often colleges and universities are thought of as places where particular points of view dominate, and that might be true, but I think it's also true to say that there are many, many different types of lived experiences, political viewpoints, academic viewpoints that come together in this campus community, whether it be the University of Chicago or any place else. And when that happens, when you have the collision of all these ideas, there can sometimes be some tension that arises because not everyone necessarily is going to think and feel and write and have opinions in the same way. I think also in recent time, there's been this idea that's come forward that somehow free speech is associated with one type of political viewpoint over another. I think that in and of by itself is worthy of debate and conversation. But I think just because universities are seen oftentimes as bellwethers of what's going on in the broader society, it sort of stands to reason that there's going to be a lot of debate and conversation around free speech and free expression.
That's right. Leila, the topic of hate speech typically arises in discussions around free expression. Can you frame that quickly and potentially discuss some of the issues and dilemmas that arise in those discussions?
One of the largest dilemmas is hate speech does not exist as a legal category in the United States. And certainly the University of Chicago principals do not promote or do they protect illegal speech or harassing speech on campus. But some of that speech that doesn't fall into those categories is deeply offensive and objectionable. And what do you do about that speech? And that's a place where you need to double down on free expression. That's a place where you need to test those ideas to show why they are objectionable, offensive, and inadequate to explain the world in which we live, and create the counter discourse, the counter arguments that create a compelling and effective case for your point of view. That is what freedom of expression develops, is that sort of habit of the mind to be able to incisively be able to name something, counter it, and promote something else that furthers our advancement of knowledge.
Great, thanks. So let's talk about specifically at UChicago. Ravi, what does this all look like in practice?
Sure. So from where I sit, the university's commitment to free expression means that we support students in expressing and also exploring ideas through conversation, through written work, through programming, through art, through protest and demonstration, and occasionally counter-protest, and many other forms of expression. It means that we embrace challenging conversations, and in fact that we strive to normalize challenging conversations. We believe that wrestling with an idea or perspective that you haven't considered before presents opportunities for growth. Even if that means you end up reaffirming your original position and sharpening your argument in the process. It also means that this is an exciting place to be and that there's a lot to learn, both in terms of actual knowledge and understanding and also how we get there. There are a number of skills that we can practice to help us engage on a deeper level and pave the way for more meaningful interactions.
Great. Thanks. Ellie, from your perspective?
So for me, free speech means that students should feel capable of and empowered to speak up at all times. They shouldn't feel stifled or silenced by their peers, even if their opinion's unpopular. It means that we at the University of Chicago, particularly in the college, should both welcome and champion a diverse set of perspectives and experiences. So to celebrate discourse that really does come from a principled place.
Thanks. Leela, based on the last question related to the academic setting, which we just talked about, how does intellectual humility assist us? What's the role of listening? Ravi talked a little bit about that.
Well, one of the downfalls, I think, when we talk about free expression or even free speech in the United States is we tend to talk about it almost exclusively as something we do individually. And we do. It is an individual right. But at an academic institution, and I would argue further in a democracy, it's a communal value. We do discourse together. It requires a party and an exchange. And to that end, then, what it requires of each of us in this academic community is that we have the capacity and inclination to seek out and engage with differences and disagreements, that we need to be active agents in that process. To do that well, it requires three things. First, intellectual curiosity and intellectual humility. The idea is that there is something to be gained out there, that there are different perspectives that will inform our perspectives, that will deepen our knowledge. And then finally, and maybe most importantly in today's world, it also requires a generosity. Language is a really imperfect tool, right? It is symbolic. It isn't the actual, and it's really not that good always at expressing ideas or feelings, but it's all we have. It's also used by really imperfect beings, right? We bring to any interaction irritability, our tiredness, our unawareness of where other people are coming from or where they are. All that requires us to enter into those interactions with a lot of humility and generosity and really learn to listen to others. That's where we really gain the knowledge. That's where we really gain and develop a habit that will serve us well, not just in the academic environment, but in our personal and professional lives.
Great, thanks. Michelle, I have a few questions for you. The Chicago principles are fairly straightforward. How do these come to life on campus, and what are your thoughts about how they guide programming?
So I think first and foremost, it's very important at the University of Chicago that there be this continual effort to create an environment where people feel free to express their point of view. And so that is just sort of a given in terms of the sustainability of that environment. What that means, though, is that there has to be responsibility for making sure that people who disagree have a way to do so. And so just as we espouse the Chicago principles for the value and importance of having this environment where people should feel free to express their views, it's equally important to make sure that people who oppose those views have a space and a forum and frankly, guardrails for how they can dissent. That might involve a protest, it might involve counter-programming, it might involve any number of ways in which opposing points of view are put forward. And it's just as important that the university provide an environment where that can happen as well. By extension, however, we want to make sure that just by protesting or dissenting or disagreeing with a particular point of view that might be expressed by an individual faculty member, a guest speaker, a student group, we need to make sure that those who disagree are not stepping over this line of becoming disruptive. And by disruptive, what we mean at the University of Chicago is preventing others' point of view from being expressed in the first place. And so what we see in programming is a lot of attention paid to making sure that this environment of free expression is supported, but that there's also advice, guidance, clear-cut rules, if you will, for how you can disagree in a way that is going to be compatible with our values of free expression.
So it sounds like there are things in place to assist this to come to life appropriately.
Absolutely.
What might some of those things be?
So if I think about students in particular, student groups can benefit from a lot of advice from both their advisors of their recognized student organizations, if they're part of an RSO. But really, there's frontline student-facing staff across the institution who can advise students on options they have if they want to put on a program and have it be successful, but also too for students who might want to protest a program or protest an idea or participate in some other type of action on campus or off campus where we want to make sure that they're able to express their views, but not in a disruptive way. So we've got very well-developed event advisors. We have very well-developed program review processes, which take into account all the different ways that events and programs, speakers, points of view can happen on this campus, and make sure that the apparatus around them make sure that they go off well.
Great. We're going to shift gears a little bit. Ravi, one might argue that the two fundamental values of freedom of expression and diversity and inclusion are at odds. Are they?
So this is a really interesting and important question. I think free expression and diversity and inclusion are inextricably linked and that they reinforce one another. They're core values, not because of a particular law or regulation, but because they're central to our mission as an educational institution. We define diversity really broadly, so you'll hear references to diversity of perspective, diversity of identity, diversity of experience. My work focuses on diversity of identity. And so part of my interest in this is equipping students with the skills needed to continue these conversations in hopes of answering pressing questions and ultimately advancing a more equitable society, which means that part of our work is providing opportunities to practice. And so practice includes creating spaces for the inclusion of multiple perspectives, of helping students understand power and privilege, of potentially introducing perspectives when they're not represented. So there are a couple theoretical and practical considerations that come to mind. On a theoretical level, free expression depends on diversity and inclusion. We need a diversity of ideas to advance knowledge, for research to flourish, and diversity and equity work, not just on campus, but on a societal level, depends on free expression. Diversity and equity work is inherently collaborative. It cannot be done effectively in isolation. Not to mention the fact that too often throughout history, people with unpopular opinions, or especially opinions that haven't been favored by people in power, have been silenced, and I think that's really dangerous. And now on a practical level, this doesn't mean we don't experience tension at times. And just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. I encourage people to consider the context. Are you walking out of a class discussion and you want to continue to engage a really interesting topic? Or are you sitting down to lunch after a really long week and everyone looks pretty tired? I think those types of considerations can ultimately help you advance a stronger argument, make a stronger case. I do think this can be done with generosity and kindness and a sound argument, plus a space where people feel that their contributions are going to be valued is a really winning combination.
Great, thanks. Leela, what are the ways you've seen what Ravi describes come to life, in good ways and perhaps in bad ways, or maybe not so positive ways?
Well, as Ravi noted so well, if we're going to really test ideas and pursue knowledge, and that is the basis of free expression, then we need the most diverse campus possible. And that's why you're all here. We need your new perspectives, your ideas, your insights, your thoughts will make us better. You will test each other and make each other better. And so for me, where I see it play out is in the classroom. And when we think about the University of Chicago classroom, it is that place where, as Ravi noted, you're having that great discussion that continues into the residence halls or continues into the dining places. But it also makes us really think about that communal value again, that thing that we do together. It really requires us also to remember that discursive space of the classroom, of the quad, of the residential hall, isn't always level. Not everyone has the same amount of access, dependent on a variety of variables, right? It can be the topic area, it can be your trained capacities, your preparation, language, personality characteristics, identity. I could continue this list of all the things that play in a role in that discursive space. And so then it's incumbent on all of us to ensure that that space is as level it can be, that we are inviting voices in, and we're ensuring that we're hearing the fullness of the diversity that we're bringing to campus. That will make all of you better students. That will make this campus a better community.
Great. So Leela, let's stay in the classroom for a second. Free expression works a little differently in the classroom because of the concept of academic freedom. Could you explain that concept?
Academic freedom is almost as old as universities themselves. So growing out of the European system, where we're two concepts of Lehrfreiheit and Lernfreiheit, the freedom to teach and the freedom to learn. And really what it was a freedom from church, state, and or institutional control over what knowledge was pursued. That comes straight down in a line to the U.S. university system in the early part of the last century with the concept of academic freedom and the freedom to research and to teach. How that plays out in the classroom means that faculty are experts in their discipline. It means that in our disciplines, we have tested ideas, and what that means for ideas is some ideas have been proven worthy, some ideas less worthy, some ideas not worthy of academic pursuit. So think something like flat Earth, right? That's not something we would engage in the classroom. And faculty then as experts have a freedom to research and a freedom to teach, both in content and in method.
So Ellie, are there ways students can express their concerns related to what a faculty member says in the classroom?
Yeah, I think transparency is key. So if you feel unsettled about something that is said in the classroom, my recommendation would be to talk to the professor directly about it. They'll definitely appreciate your willingness to engage with them, and you'll both be sort of better off for having done so. And so I think more broadly, professors always welcome feedback from their students. So if you have a question about an assignment, your academic performance, or really anything at all, even you just want to go in and talk ideas with them, do talk to them. Go to office hours. I would say some of my best experiences at the university have stemmed from these sorts of interactions.
Great, thanks. Leela, any perspective from a faculty member?
I would just echo what Ellie said. If you have concerns, talk to faculty members, but more generally, Think about the faculty, staff, and administrators at a college campus. We're here because we enjoy working with students. We enjoy those interactions. So come, seek us out in office hours, talk to us on campus, continue those conversations.
Great, thanks. In addition to the Stone Report, another foundational document at UChicago that students might hear about in the context of free expression is the Calvin Report. Michelle, can you provide a quick description of this report and why it's relevant to free expression here at UChicago?
Sure. So like the Stone Report, the Calvin Report, it was the product of a faculty committee that was convened in 1967 by then President Beadle. And it really is an attempt to articulate this idea that the university should be a community of critics, but the university itself should not be a critic. So the idea being that if you really want to support this environment of free expression, perhaps the number one thing you can do to stifle that is to have an institution that weighs in on the social and political issues of the day. Because by doing so and using its gravitas, its influence as an institution to put forward an opinion, it will necessarily make some individuals on campus feel shy potentially about expressing their opinion. And so the Calvin Report is really a very elegant articulation of the importance of the university remaining neutral. Not because it doesn't care or is heartless or insensitive to important issues, but because it is absolutely necessary to preserve this environment of free expression. I really recommend that people take a look at it because it is a very influential document to our university culture, and it's less than 2 pages long.
Yep. Ravi, do the Calvin Report's recommendations mean that the university never issues a statement or a position on an important issue?
So the short answer here is no. And one of the examples that comes to mind is the university's statements on immigration. So there's a line in the Calvin Report that says, from time to time, issues will arise that threaten the very mission of the university. And so the university has recognized challenges to DACA, for example, as just that. That our mission is to bring together a community of talented individuals in order to advance knowledge. And we want and we need individuals of all backgrounds to be able to participate fully in order for that to happen.
Great, thanks.
And if I might just throw in the large takeaway on this is the institution itself does not take stands or certain stands. Individual faculty, students, staff can promote and take stands on any issue.
Great, thanks. So as we enter this quarter, having most of us either have been learning or working remotely for the past 16 months, right? The majority of our interactions have been online via Zoom or other learning platforms, as well as all our interactions on social media, whatever the platform. Leela, how do you think our discourse has shifted on these platforms over the past months, and what are some of the challenges that you've seen there?
So as someone who studies discourse, I worry about tools that keep us from face-to-face interaction. Actually, I was surprised and entirely grateful for the types of interactions that were available on Zoom. In my classroom, we built community. We had robust and vigorous discussions. It kept us from isolation, and I think we built some very important community together. I worry much more about social media, and particularly I think over the last few months in isolation, maybe we've spent more time there. The social media environment, what I worry about is the structures and the uses of it that create discursive practices that are really antithetical to what we do in academic discourse. I think they're antithetical to democracy. I think they're antithetical to building community. From the algorithms that push us to confirmation bias, to extremism, to polarization, to not testing our ideas and living in these like-minded groups, to the just real quickness of judgment that takes place on social media. Very quick to judge, very quick to act, very quick to form a mob to attack individuals. Those type of practices have not served us well, I think, as a democracy and in our communities. If we're going to live and learn together in an academic community and in democracy, we really need to relearn some of that face-to-face discursive practice that is really important of slowing down discourse, of really thinking about how we respond to others, to listening, and to actually what I will always talk about, to curiosity, humility, and just a great deal of generosity that we need to bring to our interactions in person.
Great, thanks. Ellie, speak to us from your perspective on how one can disagree with care and civility in this online world, and what are some of the challenges with that?
So I would say, as a student, and I think always, that respect in the online sphere is really key. So we should carry ourselves online in the same way that we would in the real world. That is, one should only say or write things online that they would feel comfortable saying in person, or they should only really say or write things online that they feel comfortable sort of having as themselves, as a student at the University of Chicago, sort of as a representative of the community in which they operate. So that doesn't mean that we should shy away from discourse and sort of intellectual debate in the online sphere. I think that that's something that's always welcome. However, I would say that it's important to be mindful of the permanence of the online sphere. You know, whereas in the three-dimensional classroom, words may fade or be forgotten. So my hope is that students, particularly in this coming year, sort of use the tools that I think we've harnessed in the past year of sort of being in the online sphere, having our whole lives sort of be transplanted from the three-dimensional world onto the internet, that we sort of use those tools to be more thoughtful and to be more deliberate about what we say online.
Thanks. Ravi, what should students' expectations be around social media, and what, if any, are the options for students to express any concerns?
Sure. I appreciate the advice that Ellie offered. And I think one of the key takeaways here is that if a student does have concerns, staff in all of our areas and in areas across the university are available to offer support. We may, in the course of our daily lives, experience situations that are uncomfortable and that may or may not constitute policy violations. And either way, it's really important to process with trusted advisors. So we hope to be among those trusted advisors for students. To that end, we've got a robust network of resources, including, for example, the Bias Education and Support Team, or BEST. That's an easy place to start. That's a group of staff members who are available to discuss concerns, offer emotional support, help assess options based on university policy, and connect students to resources. I will say also that with regard to social media, I think the context, the question of context is important, context and venue, that there may be value in taking a conversation offline. There may be value in inviting someone to engage in dialogue at a different time, that rest and respite are important as well.
Right, thank you. We're going to wrap up, and this is your opportunity to give the class of 2025 some last-minute thoughts or some advice. Ravi, we're going to start with you, and we'll work this way.
Yeah.
I would just say that what we've talked about today, for me, represents an aspirational vision, as Michelle mentioned earlier, that we strive to create a community where everyone feels welcomed and valued. And if students have ideas on ways to help advance that vision, if they encounter challenges, that we welcome the opportunity to engage.
Great, thanks. Ellie?
Yeah, it's really funny to think about my sort of history of the past 4 years attending these talks, or sort of being engaged in this freedom of expression panel. First year in the Ratner Gymnasium, as I'm sure you'll all come to spend a lot of time there, maybe. And then sort of going to Mandel Hall, the big fancy auditorium, sort of the following year, and then to Zoom, and now speaking with you all together, but not necessarily in front of all of you. So it's been a weird 4 years, but I think it's been a really wonderful, challenging 4 years as well. And what I would say is that I'm really, really glad to be back with all of you, and sort of not wanting to take for granted the idea of togetherness and being sort of physically together over the next year. And I think that's my real hope for all of you as you embark on your college journey. So to take advantage of the physical space of sort of being in Chicago together, spending time with your future friends on the quad, exploring the city and all of its awesome neighborhoods, and trying as much food and seeing as many different sort of museums and things like that as you can. Also just strolling through the stacks in the reg because you can. That's definitely something I'll be doing this following year. So I would say just enjoy being surrounded by people and lots of different people with many different perspectives, to really embrace all that the university has to offer, and what it means to really be together in the three-dimensional world too. So.
Thanks. Michelle.
Well, that was great, Ellie. Thank you for sharing all those wonderful ideas. I would say to the students watching today that you are joining a community of scholars, and all of the principles and the values and the aspirations we've talked about today are just as applicable to you as they are to our faculty, including our Nobel laureates and our graduate students and our postdocs. Yeah. So you are here for a reason. You belong here. And your ideas, your opinions, even though they may not be fully formed, and we hope they'll change a number of times over the course of your undergraduate career, you should express yourself. You should share your views with others, whether it be your professors, your friends, your roommates, your resident heads. This is part and parcel of being part of this community of scholars. And it might be a little bit scary at times, and it might get you into a little bit of disagreement, but that is part and parcel of learning and developing and forming a point of view and an intellect. And that's why you're here. So enjoy it.
Great, thanks. And Leela.
I echo what everyone has said. I want to key in on two real main points. You are here for a reason. New students are the lifeblood of an academic institution. Without you, we would, I think, fail to test our ideas as well as you force us to. And it's in those challenges, it's in those places and the attentions and discourse, and why I study discourse, that we find the creativity. And so you bring that to us. What Ravi said, if you have ideas, if you have concerns, you need to bring those forward, because those are the places where we will grow and create new programming and find new ways to create an even better, more inclusive campus community and intellectual community.
Thanks. I want to thank all four of you for a great discussion this morning. I also want to point out some great resources for you. The first being the university's website on free expression, freeexpression.uchicago.edu. The Piracia program for public discourse information is on the college website. Additionally, the two documents referenced today, the Stone Report and the Calvin Report, are uploaded into your Canvas platforms. I would encourage you to visit these websites, as opportunities to engage around these topics will be posted there. We hope this has been really helpful for you as you start your journey at the University of Chicago. We wish you a really great first year, and we look forward to seeing you on campus soon.